Greetings. Let's review media hosting as in audio or video, even just generic web pages, and look at the question is it really free? Is it private? Is it uncensored? And I will demonstrate an alternative compared to the common big names, the Googles, the Facebooks, and so forth, that allows individuals, small groups, large groups to host their own content in a technique that ensures privacy, resists or eliminates censorship, opens the door to anonymity, and very much takedown resistant. So examine a few items. Look at the cost of hosting a site. When you go to a site and want to upload a video to a YouTube or a Facebook or something of that nature, they have a cost. They don't do this because they're being generous. They have a serious cost because the amount of storage that's required is huge. Bandwidth infrastructure costs are very huge, so they need to regain those costs. How do they do that? They sell their product. Their product is you. You in two senses. If you're the content producer, then what you're doing is you are providing video, audio, text, whatever it is. You're providing to them something that others will view. So in doing that, you are bringing to take the obvious of YouTube, you're bringing to them eyeballs. You're bringing to them viewers. So you provide the content, and then in essence, you're also providing the viewers. Because if your content is interesting, it will bring people in. And what do they gain from this? There's the obvious advertising revenue, and one of the ways they market you is to say, okay, we're going to share the advertising revenue with you. So if your objective is to proclaim, you're trying to make money off of your viewership, you're being used. You're being used because, yes, even if you get the majority of the ad revenue, it's not just the ad revenue. Because of the fact when you proclaim, if you're just entertaining, that's a particular audience. It's just entertainment, and your style of entertainment may describe your audience. If you were trying to proclaim a particular objective, politics, theology, the common things that could be potentially sensitive, what you're going to do is tag your audience. Because if your audience is interested in that subject, by the fact that you have been tagged by this data collection, then those who watch your videos also, those characteristics about you, in essence, get attributed to them. So these video streaming services, besides the ad revenue that they get, it's data. It's been described as data is now the new oil. Oil was used as a way to provide power, still is. Data is the same way. So the more data that is collected about you, the people who visit the content that you provide and so forth, that has value. It has value not only for advertising, but for control. And that is the big concern. Not as much as the advertising, but the control. Because obviously advertising works. Why does advertising work? Because it brings a market to a producer. But it also brings a market to an idea, as you see in political advertising. So you expand that one step further by having this data collection tool, which is I'm going to provide you a way where for free I'm going to allow you to put your videos online, your audio online, and so forth. I'm going to do that for free to you. And what I get out of that, besides the potential advertising revenue, even if that doesn't exist, what I'm getting from that is this tracking data. And that is real value. So what I have is a demo for you to look at, which demonstrates not only this, but also the characteristics about how these things are censored and how you can avoid that. For example, you will find I took a few sites that publish video or audio that have specifically stated that their content is free to use. So let's look at a couple of them. One is James Corbett, CorbettReport.com. He has done a lot of things. What I did is grab some of the obvious ones. He's done a few satirical ones called A Conspiracy Theory. I did one on 9/11, JFK, the Oklahoma City bombing, and the attacks on Syria. He took a satirical view at a very serious subject. So what I did is I took those four, and so you have a conspiracytheory.shofardomain.com, and you can see where I have the pages. In this case, it does serve the videos. When you see these videos, they're not coming off of YouTube. There are the links to YouTube, so you can get to the YouTube or the BitChute versions of that. But it's also hosted directly from this machine. Something you might want to know about that machine. The machine is a $5 a month server. It's not a very expensive machine. Google has these massive things. This is a $5 a month server, single core processor with 1 GB of memory. So it's not a powerful machine, and so it's serving these videos. And so in this case, the conspiracy theory site has the satirical videos. But why did I choose that? There was an incident that occurred a while back where one, specifically the 9/11 video, was somewhat censored by YouTube. What they did is if you would actually search for it, from what I understand, this issue has been mitigated. But for an extended period of time, a number of people, and I actually tried it myself, you would actually look for 9/11, a conspiracy theory. So you put in the complete title in the search bar on YouTube. It didn't show up. So this is the sometimes called shadow banning, a soft banning. This is soft power. This is a demonstrated way where what has been offered as a proclamation, in this case satire on a serious issue, it's not really censored. It's pseudo-censored. So this was an example of that, and therefore I used these 4 videos. He's got a whole lot of videos, but I used those 4 as an example. There's a second example, and if you go to one, you'll see that there's a demo button, and it'll get you to the others. Second example, also on the same server, Timothy Kelly has a program called Our Interesting Times, and he comes from a Roman Catholic position. And his guests frequently are rather different. He does a lot of things called Powers and Principalities, a weekly podcast, part of the same thing, with Joe Atwell, who is not a Roman Catholic. And the contrast on the two perspectives is significant. The fascinating thing about his programs is that they are in depth. They're serious content, and a lot of it, especially to a large audience, is offensive. And there has been, you will see some of the videos have been marked or flagged as inappropriate for all audiences or things of that nature. So this is not saying, because the thing that's delightful about this is to take issues and dig deep into them and be able to say, I'm going to proclaim something that may be quite wrong, but I would suggest the people you learn from are the people you disagree with. And so the depth of conversation is marvelous. A lot of it is absolute garbage. But of course, the person I disagree with the most is myself 20 years ago, because, we're supposed to mature. But it is a good program. So I've taken some of its programs just as a way to show the technology. And you will note that in his case, I did simply the audio. I did only the audio because it is basically an audio program. He uses YouTube to deliver. But you'll find the links to the YouTube version and the Podomatic version of the audio only that are on the pages. But one of the things you also should note there is look at the navigation. What you can see is a taste of, it's not very complete, but it's a taste of the idea of saying, I'm not interested in what's the latest. I'm interested in a particular subject matter or a particular person. I want to follow a particular thing. most things, especially demonstrated by Facebook or even YouTube videos, you see the latest. So it's kind of like what's new as opposed to I want to follow thought. And so part of the process here is the navigation to make it where you can follow a particular person, thought, or subject matter or something of that nature, not only just by date. So you can see a little bit more of that with the Our Interesting Times version. Another one is Alpha and Omega Ministries, James White. So this is serious Christian theology. And I put in particular 2 programs. This is as of January 2019. There may be more or less, because again, this is just a demo. But I put 2 particular programs on there. One was from, I think about last week, entitled The Russian Collusion, which, because he was in Russia at the time and talked about some various issues that are occurring within the Christian community or towards the Christian community, both in Russia and, of course, in the United States. And they made the comment about we need the technology when we're censored. Well, I'm demonstrating the technology that he basically said we need. Here it is. So I put that program on there, but I also put another one on there. Is homosexuality consistent with New Testament obedience? I was fascinated by this. It's a debate. James White and Michael Brown together were on one side of the question. And the fascinating thing about that is those two disagree on a lot of core issues. But the ultimate core of Christianity, they're in lockstep. But they have a radically different brand. But they together were on one side. And the other side was a man and a woman, a black man and a white woman. So the humor there was it was James White, Michael Brown. So brown and white versus black and white. So it was a humorous observation during the debate. And what that showed was a level of civil discourse. They didn't take that as a hateful thing, but a humorous aspect of it, and it basically defined one side versus the other. So it was a delightful conversation, and the thing I would like to point out is, yes, I would personally say that Brown and White they have skilled at the debate. They had better stage presence and things of that nature, and I believe they were actually correct. But black and white, the man and the woman who debated them, they were clearly not as skilled, but they were willing. They had enough courage to get on stage with somebody who had the experience of doing this and be able to stand their ground on their position. I believe their position was wrong, but they were willing, and for that, in a sense, they were more courageous than James White and Michael Brown because they were willing to proclaim what they believed, even though they couldn't do it as well. But that sheer willingness was very honorable. So I put that on because I think it was delightful. And again, part of the issue that James White has mentioned frequently is the censorship that is occurring to a greater degree. So these 3 examples, the conspiracy theory from James Corbett, Our Interesting Times from Timothy Kelly, and Alpha and Omega Ministries, James White, I use those as examples. This is January 2019. They may be there, they may disappear. It's an example. And so peruse, please. But now let's look at the underlying technology. What are the things that will cause issues with privacy, issues with takedowns, and things of that nature? Well, let's start with some fundamentals. The domain. This is shofarnexus.com, or I'm also using shofardomain.com. You have to manage that. There has been some notable goofs. For example, in the 1990s, Microsoft, you might have heard of them. They forgot to renew their domain name. This, of course, in the 90s, the World Wide Web was kind of new, so it really hadn't gained quite the presence it has in 2019. So they goofed. So for a short while, they disappeared. And it was kind of a semi-humorous event. About a year or 2 years ago, Regions Bank, a very large corporation, did the same thing. They goofed. So, and they went down. I think they were down for like a weekend or something of that nature. Came back up, and the CEO, I believe it was, did a video expressing, "We goofed. I'm sorry, we goofed." And I respect that, because whether or not you're a small player or a huge player, you're still humans, and we make mistakes. So those kind of goofs happen. And I think it's a great example because you can see that happening with large players as well as, Joe Mom and Pop. But the domain system that gives us the Microsoft.com and the Regions.com or the ShofarNexus.com, it's a business. It's run by ICANN, ICANN. And it is an organization. It is now considered an international organization, a global organization. And they manage this. They manage the .com, the .org, the .net, and all the two-letter country codes and the various new domains that came online during the 2012-2013 timeframe. This is being driven by business, not technology. The technology used is defined by business considerations, control considerations, far more than it is technology considerations. It is a wonderful idea to say, no matter where I am, no matter who I am, my computer will simply go to the root. And from the root, go to the .com, go to the ShofarNexus.com, and say this is what points to this machine, that is Shofar Nexus, or ShofarNexus.com. Or if I want to go to Google.com or Microsoft.com or whatnot, it uses the same technique. It's wonderful, right? However, with that central authority, the root, you have control. Problems with control is you have various things. Not just like the goose where you forget to renew a name, but seizures, domain name seizures. A couple of obvious examples. Several years back, megaupload.com was taken down. It was seized because and this is a foreign from the United States, foreign organization by the FBI in the United States, seized the domain name, took them down, put them out of business, sort of. They survived in different ways. But the point is, because there's central control, an authority can take down the domain. You'll see the same thing happen with Silk Road, which those same kind of thing happened. There was a takedown, but you can say, but they were doing something illegal or immoral or whatever. You can use that kind of argument. But that's a separate question from the fact that you have the ability, because of the central control, to take down the domain. That should be a concern. There's another factor that should be considered. When you are sitting on a computer and you say you want to go to ShofarNexus.com or YouTube.com or something of that nature, your computer asks, please, will you tell me where is this computer? And what happens behind the scenes is your computer could do it itself. You can go to the root and say the root will tell you, this is where the .com is. Now this is where Shofar Nexus name server is, and the Shofar Nexus name server will point to the actual Shofar Nexus machine. That's an option. But a lot of times what we do is we go to a third party. That third party, you will simply say, excuse me, where is ShofarNexus.com? And it will respond back with that direct answer. So a lot of the work that would be involved happens by this third party. And Google does this. There are organizations like It's not coming to mind right now. But there are other parties that perform this service, and it's free. Why? Why would it be free? It's free because that little piece of information, the fact that you have decided that you wanted to go to YouTube, to Google, to Shofar Nexus, to this questionable site, to this site of this particular political persuasion, to this site of this particular religious persuasion, to this site of this particular product persuasion, that's information. That is a little subtle, tiny bit of information about you. Not only that you went to that site, but roughly when and potentially how often. A good way to do this is if there is a timeout factor that occurs. If I go and say, please tell me where shofarnexus.com is, and then say, here it is, here's the address, and this address, I'm going to tell you that it'll be good for the next 24 hours, 48 hours, week, whatever. Or I can tell you it's going to be good for the next hour. So an hour passes and you're still on the site and you want to do something more. And you go again, oh, well, it expired. So let me ask again. Little techniques like this allow that person or that third party that is giving you the DNS information, resolving the domain name for you, now has a little bit more information. You went on this site at this time. An hour later, you were still on that site, or you went back to it. So these little subtle pieces of information seem like, that doesn't matter. Yes, it does. It really does. And by accumulating large quantities of this information about you, that's why a third party can say, allow me to offer a DNS service. So it's the tracking, it's the seizure issues that are a real concern with this rooted system. But there is the idea of a rootless domain name system. Now, what this happens, so you understand there is a root run by ICANN, and there are actually a fixed number of IP addresses. Those are the roots. I mean, this is a file you can download from ICANN, and typically your machine has it in it. The list of those IP addresses, or your third party, the Google, or your ISP's domain name system, it will have that information and use that to find the IP addresses for you. But if you use a technique, for example, I know instead of the roots, but some of these what's called top-level domains. What I could do then is, if I know .com or .org, and I may go to the .com and say, I would like to go to my personal website, kozlowski.org. So I go to the .com and say, could you tell me where kozlowski.org is? And he says, oh, well, actually, I'm .com, but .org is over here. Oh, thank you. Now I'll go to .org and ask there. That is very possible. And actually, I've done some tests. Some of the roots, top-level domains will indeed do that for you. But if you do that, ICANN loses control, because now it's no longer one root, but a peers of top-level domains. And that opens the door to one step further. The idea of third parties coming in and saying, oh, excuse me, I would like to offer another top-level name, .cheeseburger, .fish and chips, .tomatoes, or whatever. Or I want to have my own private for my family, a particular group, or my business, or whatever. That is just us. So only we who have access to our domain server can get to particular domains. The idea to do that is relatively simple, and it was actually described in 2012 and 2013, during the time that ICANN was coming out with the expanded domains. Again, they had a problem during 2012 and 2013 with excessive funds. I don't know how many people have that kind of problem, but they had a problem with excessive funds, again, because it was business, not technology, that was driving this. So there are ways around this. The rootless domain technology would allow for you to work with the existing system and work independent of it. What that opens the door to is the demo. If you use the demo, for example, you use the aomin.shofardomain.com, or you go to aomin.own, O-W-N, and you get there. They both point to the same location. Or you go to conspiracytheory.shofardomain.com or conspiracytheory.own. Problem is, unless your computer knows to go to not only your ISP provided or the Google DNS resolver, you won't get there with .own. You have to be able to go that one extra step. So what needs to be, the technology is easy. And you can demonstrate this right now, but you need to go one step and build that ecosystem, saying, okay, I don't want to use Google's. I don't want to use my ISPs. I want to be able to have my domain system, my domain resolution occur where I'm not tracked, where I'm not concerned about if I have a .own site, that there's technology in place, it can't be seized. So an authority can't come and say, we don't like what you say, we're taking you down. Or I don't want to be in a country that says, we are going to block websites by this domain name. This happens. With the rootless domain technology, if you are in a country that blocks domains, it doesn't matter. You get around it. That block disappears. So that is just one part of the block. But blocking domain names, that issue is gone with the rootless domain technology. And here is a demo of that. There's also a couple other things you might want to notice about the websites. Again, the demo is supposed to show you a different mindset. There is the browse versus search mentality, because obviously what we are being trained is that, I have a question, so I'll ask Google, and Google will give me the answer. I don't have to think about it. That's the search mentality versus the browse mentality. I want to be able to go to a site that I trust, because this person, I feel, has a similar mindset, offers credible information. And I want to be able to have that information. I want to be able to look at somebody who also maybe has a different mindset that will come from a different perspective. And maybe that I completely disagree with. But he's credible. So I want to have these opposing perspectives. Now, a third party come in and say, okay, on this question, there's this, consider reviewing those. I would like to be able to have the technology built into the structure of the websites to be able to say, it's not, I want to ask a question and you guide me, is I want the information presented to me and I can decide. But it requires that pardon me, this is a bad word, but I have to think. So that, I think, is something that needs to be refined. But again, I understand most people won't do this. Thinking is just not a common thing. We'd rather simply have it spoon-fed to us. There is a minority who wants to be able to say, I want to explore this myself. I want to hear both sides. That's why I respect people like Timothy Kelly, who brings in people that disagree with the Roman Catholic position and has a rational dialogue. Those are the things that I think are delightful, and I don't want to shut them up. I want to make sure that, as he has been partially taken down with some of his videos, I want this technology, it won't happen. The other thing that you should notice is a couple of subtleties. If you, I've done some tests on, again, this machine is a single core processor running with 1 G of memory. Yes, I don't have, I could not handle 100 million views at one time, but could handle a good number. And for most cases, including most cases in the video market, it's fine. But notice when you move around the site, my testing thus far, compared to a site like Google or YouTube, it's at least twice as fast. Why would this single core processor, compared to the massive amount of servers that Google has, why would the single core be so much faster? The reason is because the bulk of what happens when you go to a site like Google and a lot of others is doing things for tracking. If you actually look, a lot of browsers, you have the tools to look at the underlying what's happening, what sites you're going to. Look at what's happening. Look at when I go to Google.com, when I go to a lot of sites that offer a Facebook or WordPress, look at the actual information of how many sites are actually queried to bring data to generate that one page. You go to a site that is made by a WordPress or something of that nature, and you'll find that it's not that one site you went to. You've actually gone to a half dozen or more. So it took time to go to those different places, to resolve the addresses, to get to the various data sets that they have, and to link all these things together. Then there's a second aspect of it. You have script, JavaScript typically, on your computer, your browser. It's effectively running a program. They download programs and your computer runs that. Now that's really a vital thing if you want to be able to do something like display real-time data. You want to map to Zoom and something of that nature. The script things happens. The bulk of script that's there is to say, I want to go get this data, I want to go get this data, and so forth, and get data from various different websites. And I want to report in. The script will say, let me know about characteristics of this machine. I want to take those characteristics and send it to a place like Google Analytics. If you use your browser, you'll probably find Google Analytics, because data is being collected about your machine and about you and being sent to Google Analytics or other tracking entities in order to know you, in order to find out characteristics about you, about your machine, and about you. And of course, there is the possibility that software developers are human beings who make mistakes, and there could be a bug in the program, and you'll find that often you go to a particular page and suddenly things become slow, sluggish, or stop because there are bugs, and there is the slowness that has occurred and you also find that you see the animated things moving around on the screen and so forth as the screen is built for the page you're going to. It entertains you, but you got to wait. And why do you want to wait? So that in the background, because the page, because it's doing so many complicated things, is so sluggish, they can entertain you while they're waiting and doing things. Whereas, if you look at pages generated by Shofar Nexus, such as these demo sites, you'll find it's virtually instantaneous. It's only going to one website. There is no issue about cross-site scripting. You can find a lot of dialogue on this. It doesn't happen. One, there's no scripts. And two, it's all coming from one site. There's no going to a tracking site. There's no going to Google Analytics or DoubleClick or various other places that will track you. It's not there. That is the kind of privacy that I think a lot of users would be inclined to have. And of course, the speed aspect. Do you want to waste your time, or do you want to get to the information? Another thing should be considered is if you are a content provider, if you're putting video online, is your objective to gain revenue from this? Well, at that point, then you have to try to feed your audience and do things to generate appropriate things to whatever generates that revenue, typically ads. So you have to be ad friendly. If you're proclaiming something that is politically incorrect, for example, if you take a theological position You're in the Christian community, and if you subscribe to the sovereignty of God versus free will, and you're on the wrong side of the question, it could concern you. If you look at Christianity versus Islam, and you're on one side or the other, depending upon your audience, it could concern you. If you take a political debate, for example, climate change, and you offer evidence about, well, this is why it's happening, or this is why it's not. If you look at some of the issues of like the data leaks of the misrepresented data from the IPCC, and you look at evidence about the arguments whether or not the greater factor is the sun versus man, or things of that nature, you have rational information on both sides of the question. But if you're advertiser driven, if you have to support a particular perspective in order to generate revenue, the way you proclaim that position is going to be impacted. Truth will take a second stage compared to what needs to be up front is, can I get the revenue? Take another example, the history of war. War is deception. Sun Tzu said that many years ago. War is deception. It starts and it's required all the way through. So you take the example of the conspiracy theory from James Corbett, who did one on the Syria airstrikes. Well, he did it on the 2017, and of course, about a year later, almost to the day, 2018, virtually the same thing happened. And with the second one, there's a whole lot of information out there that the whole thing was a fraud, never happened. So there was no chemical strike. It was staged. Now, there's a lot of information out there about that, but there's also contrary. Do you want to limit that, or do you want to be able to get both sides of the question? If you have this confirmation bias, I believe this or I believe that, do you want to be able to get rational information from the other side? Or do you want to shut them off? Obviously, what happens because of revenue generation or because of censorship, those sides of the questions are shut off. People will say, "Dear Google, please think for me." For that market, I offer nothing. For the people who say, "Okay, I want to understand," and so therefore I want to be able to get access to the information, I want to not be cut off from it, or if I want to proclaim something about any of these issues, I don't want to be cut off. So you need the technology to do that. This is a demonstration. These demo sites, which is demo.show4domain.com, will get you there. It's a demo of some of the technology that will keep both sides of the question available. Especially when you get into areas like the what's known as the Great Firewall of China. It's not unique to China. There are lots of places where particular perspectives, particular domain names, and so forth are censored. You can't get there. With this technology, they don't know. You can get around it. There are a lot of techniques to get around it. But this is something that the problem with the domain name system is, if you control that core, if you control the root, in a sense, you control the world. So if you go rootless, there is no central authority. And so again, you go to the theology discussion. If you look at the question of Islam versus Christianity, if you are in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, you are going to be cut off from the Christian perspective. If you're in the United States, a lot of times there is pressure to keep you from the Islamic perspective. So a rational dialogue cannot take place. The objective here is not to promote one side or the other. The objective is to make sure that both sides can come to the table. I will stand on particular positions, but I want the person who has a rational argument, especially that disagrees with me, to be able to come to the table for a rational discussion. I want to know the truth? Do you? Do you want to be able to talk with people who disagree with you, or do you want to censor them? The rootless domain technology that's demonstrated by Chauffeur Nexus allows for that dialogue to occur. It allows us to make sure that we as one group cannot cut off you as a different group. Because today you may be able to cut off somebody you don't like. Tomorrow, somebody you don't like is going to cut you off. This is the technology to allow both parties to come to the table. I asked for your review of it. Also, I did those demo sites with Timothy Kelly, James Corbett, James White. I'm interested in finding somebody who says, I'm interested. I want to use this technology, and not for me to put on a demo of you, but to turn it over to you where you can build your own. Interested parties, john@chauffeurnexus.com. Please contact me. The technology is there. One last point. This is on a demo server. Again, I spend $5 a month on this server. It's not a big expense. So it's very easy for somebody to very affordable to do this. But the second thing, the demo server has all the security basically lowered to nothing. With the demo server, you can look at the details of what's happening in depth. You can also mess it up, but it gets wiped periodically because it may go down if somebody does something malicious. So just simply wipe it and give it fresh again. But the point is, you can look behind the scenes. You can see all the details of what's happening. You can see the level of diagnostics that are built into the technology. You can see the fact that hopefully you'll find that it's extremely consistent in its design. The technology is simple. The objective is simple because the objective is to be able to allow a novice user, a novice software developer, for example, to be able to see, oh, I see how this works. The tools that are in there show everything, down to the byte level, internal. So the tools are there. The internal structure is very consistent, very simple. So it's there for your perusement. It's there for you to see how it works. Comments, questions, or if you have a way you'd like to use it, feel free. The objective is to put this into the public domain. The only request I have is you call it something else besides Chauffeur Nexus. Chauffeur Nexus is this version. You can call it whatever. But the other aspect about this is not a very good business model that I have. If I develop software and give it away free, I don't eat well. So I'm looking for driver projects. The thing that should be noted about Chauffeur Nexus, it's standalone. It's not. It will run on top of Windows, which the current server is, or it'll run on top of Linux, or it'll run on bare hardware, because it is self-contained. The point behind that is when you have a general purpose operating system, other things can be added in. Many environments, that's great. If security is your utmost concern, one program, that's it. There is no mechanics to add something else to it. It's one program that does everything. The program is actually small, and it's a particular data structure and not a database. It's a tree, data tree that is very simple, that does everything. So it's a simple structure, has a variety of uses, including streaming video, audio, doing generic web pages, and other things. It actually does run things like convenience stores. But so it's there doing things, and it's available. Interested in dialogue? john@chauffeurnexus.com. So again, please look at the examples, and if you find it interesting, if you want to be the driver, contact me.